What's going on, guys? Aaron from Top Tier Gaming here, and today I'm coming at you with an updated Madolche deck profile, post a new format, and as we go into Legacy of Destruction very soon. I think it's best to get the elephant in the room with Madolche out of the way. We just had 3 brand new cards revealed for this deck, and I actually planned to do this deck profile before those were revealed this morning, but I think it's perfect timing because I do want to talk about those cards and what they mean for Madolche, because there's some good, some not so good, and maybe they're not as good as we're possibly thinking, and I just want to give my thoughts as I go through the profile. Probably towards the end, I'll explain how I think those cards might change Madolche going forward. Another thing to mention is that this list is very similar to like my Madolche list I was tinkering with in full power tier limits format, because I think that is still like the best way to play Madolche. So there's some cards in here, or really a lack of cards in here you might be expecting, but I will explain those thoroughly as I go through the profile. And before we hop into it, I do want to let you guys know we are very close to 15,000 subscribers, so if you do like Madolche or like what I do here on the channel, feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps me out. And with all that being said, let's hop into this Madolche deck profile. Alright, so before jumping into the Madolche monsters, there is something else I would like to say, and that is like this deck is very dependent on the format around it. I think if you're in a very hand trap heavy format like we have been, the deck sort of struggles to like deal with all the hand traps, and it performs better in a board breaker format. That being said, considering we've been in a hand trap format so long, I have built this list to try and combat hand traps. Just know if we do adapt into a board breaker format, there are some things you can change with the list, namely one card that I will show at the very end of the deck profile. Alright, starting with monsters, we have 3 Madolche Angeli. Angeli remains as the best starter in the Madolche engine because she does not care about the status of your graveyard, which has always been a big thing. Madolche has always been a weird deck, and I say in every profile, where sometimes your starters aren't starters, specifically looking at cards like Pettingcessor and Hoot Cake. Angeli is the one card who simply doesn't care, so just opening Angeli, no matter the status of your graveyard, is going to get you to full combo. Yeah, you're definitely going to maximize the 3 Angeli as she is just the best starter. I am still choosing to maximize Pettingcessor because she is very strong, obviously, as an extender and a starter. So if like Angeli is going to get impermanenced on summon, you can still special Pettingcessor from your hand and go full combo. Of course, alongside the Pettingcessor, I am playing the 1 Puddingcess. Puddingcess is a just mandatory engine requirement for your Pettingcessor because so many lines require Puddingcess as an Xyz material. You are kind of forced to run her. But yeah, these just continue to be like the second best starter. And unfortunately, there's no Madolche in this list. When I talked about cards you might expect to find in here that aren't, Madolche is one of them. I love Madolche. She's actually my favorite Madolche monster. I just don't think she fits with the current Madolche strategy like in the best way possible, because she's like awkwardly weak to other hand traps and she doesn't add as much to the deck as other cards do in her slot, and her being a spellcaster is a little weird. You really like having fairies in hand like Pettingcessor. So yeah, essentially these 3 Pettingcessor and the 3 Angeli are like the main 1 card starters for your lineup of Madolche monsters. Next I have 1 Hoot Cake. I've been on 1 since tier format. I don't think you need 2 of this. Hoot Cake is one of those cards that is very dependent to have, like the status of your graveyard is very relevant when it comes to Hoot Cake being a starter or not. Like if you open him going first and there's no way to get a monster in grave, he does nothing. But he is mandatory to run in the deck, and he's essentially just the beast to allow Messengelato to get your searches. Speaking of, we have the 2 Messengelato. Messengelato is, yeah, I got a love-hate relationship with this guy, and I think every Madolche player does. This card, and Puddingcess to an extent as well, is really frustrating in Madolche because like your board is pretty strong and like what the engine does is pretty good. However, compared to like other decks in the format that put up even crazier boards, they don't require 3 engine bricks like Puddingcess and the Messengelatos, which is very annoying. And Madolche does have that problem, like you're just forced to run minimum 2 of this. I've tried with one so many times, but it just doesn't work. Like you will need that second one constantly. So we're forced to play 2 of this card. He gets all your spells and traps. He's very important, but it's just a shame that he's required. For Madolche spells and traps, we have 1 Chateau. Honestly, I think this is just the best card in the deck. Chateau is like everything for how I currently am playing Madolche. And we are on 1 Promenade. I'm not playing Salon, another card like Madolche you might expect to see. However, I don't think that card is good for the current way I'm playing the deck. It just doesn't work half the time to do anything special because I'm not going to play Ticket. I'm not playing multiple Promenade. It's not really setting anything. I don't run Madolche, so the extra normal summon isn't super relevant. So these are really the only spells and traps I need, and it also, again, helps with the consistency of the deck because you're not drawing extra bricks like Message Lotto, Pudding Cess, and then like salons that aren't doing anything, tickets that aren't doing anything. I'm just playing like the mandatory spells and traps in my opinion, each at like a limited 1-of copy. Now with the support coming out, there is a trap card that got revealed that I do think is good. I wish it was a little better. I think it has an issue with some of like the text. If it was just changed ever so slightly, like if it said it returned to deck, it could attach itself as an Xyz material, that'd be nice. I still think the new trap is good, but not so amazing you'll run any more than one. I think you'll run one of it and then you'll have one Promenade and one of that trap in the future. But for now, of course, we are just running 1-in-1 of Promenade and Chateau. For the secondary, ever so important engine in Madolche, I don't think there's a way to play Madolche anymore without these cards. I mean, there is, but I don't like the old Magdalene build that maybe runs D-Shifter. I am on the Vernia Sylphs, which shouldn't be too much of a surprise. These cards are very strong in Madolche. Duck, in particular, is just an additional copy of Angeli or Pettingcessor, and it allows you to essentially get around the whole issue with having a graveyard and needing Pettingcessor or Hootcake to be a starter, because you can use Duck to discard either of them and get them out on the board with their effect requirements met in the case of Pettingcessor, or fueling the graveyard with Duck himself for Hootcake. So it makes every Madolche monster a starter, and it searches your starters, and it's an extender. It is weak to cards like Ash and Bell, but honestly, this card is phenomenal. Locking yourself into Earths is relevant for a couple cards in the deck I should mention, or at least Earth effects, but I'll mention those as they come up. But yeah, I think running the Vernia Sylphs is mandatory, and it's something most Madolche players are doing. Then I have 3 Flourishing Hills and 1 Awakening Forest, otherwise known as Cosmo and Wanda. These, I think, 3 Flourishing Hills is very standard because it's just 3 additional copies of the Duck. So essentially you have 6 copies of the Duck, which is 6 copies additionally of Pettingcessor and Angeli. So that's 12 starters to an extent. You actually have more than that, but 12 starters we've seen so far, outside of counting Hootcake, which would be 13. I do think you need to play the 1 Awakening Forest. It's just an additional name that is sometimes searchable if you already have Duck and then you have her. And sending a monster from your deck to the graveyard is very good for a couple of cards in the deck, either for Chateau lines to add them back to hand, or for certain side deck cards. Yeah, I think you do want to play at least the 1 Awakening Forests. Also, being level 4 is super relevant because there are some lines where you can start off making a rank 4 Xyz that isn't a Madolche and then continue your plays after that, and that will make more sense when I get to the extra deck. For spells, this is going to look a little odd. I'm on 2 Pot of Prosperity and 2 Small World. It has been a very long time since I've showed Small World in a deck profile. I had to grab this card from the deepest depths of my binder. But Small World in this deck, I think it was in my last list as well. It's just actually really good in this deck for a couple reasons. There's a lot of really good bridges, and at the end of your combo, it's very often that you'll have extra engine in your hand because of Chateau, and you'll want to search for specifically certain pieces of non-engine that are very accessible through Small World, and it makes your end board infinitely more insane. And this is all relevant because of Madolche Chateau being the pivotal point of the deck. And 2 Prosperity might look weird because why are you not just playing 3? This is a 40 card list, and there's simply not a single card I would rather take out for Prosperity. But if this 2-of ratio looks egregious to you because you feel you should be playing 3 of it, you can go to 41 or even take out a Small World for it if you really feel that way. Me, the 2 and 2 might look a little weird because 2 Prosperity is a little unorthodox, but it also gives you diversity in your draws, so you're not drawing multiple copies of a particular one of these, and that makes some of your hands a lot better. 1 Called By, standard enough. Hand Traps is this deck's worst nightmare, so if you're going to activate your Duck and it's going to get Ashed, you're going to want to have Called By for Ash, you're going to want to have Called By for Droll. This is just mandatory in this deck. Now on to the non-engine, which is where I think Madolche gets ridiculously interesting. I mean, I think even this list has so many things different from standard Madolche, where you see Magdalene and Salon and cards you just would expect Ticket. So I guess even the engine's a little unorthodox for how I've been playing it for the last year or so. But the non-engine is very interesting in my opinion and very different. So hopping into that, we're going to start with 3 Fenrir, which is just insane in this deck because he is Earth, which works amazing with your Vernia Sylphs obviously, so you're always going to max this guy in this deck. The synergy with the Vernia Sylphs are just too strong. He also works extremely well with Small World as a bridge, but also just putting another copy of himself in hand gives you a free Small World target, which is pretty strong. Next is 1 Kurikara, which might look interesting. This is essentially in here because it turns your Small World into a go second card. I always like having at least 1 target for Small World, where if I draw it going second, it's not just searching additional engine that gets negated. There's a lot of things that bridge into Kurikara, which I think is very nice. And she's also a fairy, which is decently relevant. And because she's an inherent summon to summon herself by tributing your opponent's monsters, it means even if you're Verniself locked, you can still like summon her and send a lot of their cards to the graveyard, which is very relevant. You won't get the end phase effect, but it's still pretty good. Next up, arguably the most important card in the deck, and the reason I think to play Madolche, is Herald of Orange Light. This card makes me so sad back in tier format. So for those who don't know, I was actually playing this deck in Ishizu tier format, and I actually got several first place finishes during that format despite full power tier, because this deck actually had a decent matchup. And then they put this card to 1 and I just didn't touch the deck after that. It was so unfortunate. You really want multiple of this card because of the way Chateau can abuse Orange Light, and you can end up using this card upwards of 3, maybe even 4 times a turn. It's absolutely disgusting. Having 4 Orange Light is ridiculous. And this is one of the cards where Small World is very nice, because not only is it a bridge to access certain pieces, but adding this at the end of your combo is huge. And this also helps mitigate the impact of some hand traps your opponent might have, like Droll, Nibiru. So having Orange Light, I think, is imperative. You probably want to max this, and it's another reason why running just like the Fairy Madolches are more important than things like Magdalene. And this is also where a card like Kurikara comes up being Fairy. And you want to maximize it at 3 because you just want to see it, and you wouldn't even mind seeing it in multiple copies. The second most important hand trap is Effect Veiler, and that happens to also be because of Chateau. Like, Chateau makes Effect Veiler bonkers as well, because if you open 2 Veilers, or you open one and you small rolled into another at the end of your combo, you can use 2 Veiler on their turn, right? And then you can Glass Souffle, target the 2 Veilers, add them both back to hand when Chateau's on the field, and you get 4 Veilers, right? Because this is a not once per turn hand trap, that's why she's so good. So yeah, 3 Effect Veiler, and there's no infinite impermanence in this deck, which is another weird thing about the non-engine. Because you're running Small World and Verniselfs, there's just a huge reason to run more monsters. In theory, you could run like 2 Effect Veiler, 1 Imperm, but that just seems bad. Because of Chateau, Small World, and the Verniselfs, monsters are just like higher priority. Yes, you're playing into talents a little bit by running Veiler over Imperm, but I think for your engine and the way the deck's built, you simply have to. So 3 Effect Veiler, no Impermanence. Then I have 2 Ash Blossom, which is a weird ratio, right? And over the 3rd Ash Blossom, I am playing the 1 Ghost Bell. The Ghost Bell is here specifically for Awakening Forests, and it's one of the reasons I think you need to play Awakening Forest, is there's a lot of times where you have extra engine and you have this guy, and you can dump the bell from your deck to your hand and add it back with the Chateau, essentially turning Awakening Forest into 1 additional interrupt, which is huge. And this is relevant for some things in the side deck as well with Awakening Forest, like if you side the Ishizu cards, he can send those. There's cards like Skull-Marked Ladybug that are relevant. But yeah, that's why I'm on the 2 Ash and 1 Bell. They do solve some of the same matchups, like Labyrinth, they're both fine. Overall, Bell is a little weaker, but I think because of the way the deck plays, you just want her. And she's an important Small World bridge, so that's why that ratio looks like that. Lastly, for hand traps, I'm on 2 Nibiru, which is just because I have no space to run 3. I wouldn't mind running 3 of this card. It's not at 2 for any particular reason, besides the fact that I just don't have space for a 3rd. If you want to go over 40, just feel free to add another Nibiru, but I think 2 is fine for running a 40 card list. And the last card is the Grave Digger's Trap Hole, which I mentioned earlier with Verniselfs that having level 4s is relevant. I run Rafflesia in my extra deck because we are in a hand trap format. I want to respect them by being able to go Rafflesia first, protect me from Nibiru, which is this deck's worst nightmare. Even things like Droll and Ash, to an extent, are just so terrifying to play against that I run this in the hand trap formats. If we're in a board breaker format, feel free to take this card out for an extra Nibiru, or whatever card you see fit. This is simply in here because of the current environment of the game, where there's a lot of hand traps, and this card's very strong in those situations. On to the extra deck, we have the 2 Tiara Masu, which is, historically one of the best Madolche monsters, just period. She is phenomenal as a board breaker as long as she can stick. This is one of the cards that gets so much better with the new support, because it does give you an option for your, like as an interrupt now, because you can make her turn 1 and then overlay the other Tiara Masu, or Tiara Phrase, I think is her name, but yeah, Tiramisu, you're running 2 of it, you don't need 3. There's only 1 Madolche monster in the extra deck I play 3 of, and that is the Glass Souffle, and that's because she is the most important Madolche monster. She gives you some good matchups into certain graveyard decks, but most importantly, the way she interacts with Chateau is beyond broken, and it's the reason I like playing this deck. The ability to turn a monster unaffected by monster effects is also huge for like mitigating some impacts from Nibiru, but also turning Hoot Cake essentially invincible because of Angeli plus Glass Souffle together. So yeah, you're going to want to max 3 of this. She's also just a way to detach a material, which is very relevant, because when you go into your Chocolate a la mode, you will want a Madolche in your graveyard, so you can send it back to deck and then proc her effect. She's like the most fragile card in the face of hand traps, which is what really annoys me about the deck, and that's what I'm sad they didn't give support for, is the deck's crippling weakness to anything like Imperm on this card or even other hand traps. Like, they just hurt this card so much, and they really didn't mitigate that issue, and that's Madolche's weakest issue. But a lot of your big combos pivot into this card, so you're going to want to run 2, and also she can help make big Zeus's if you're not like locked into Madolche. 2 Sistart, this is our 1 link. Of course, there is a new link coming out, and that card is very good, but I don't know how it's going to operate in Madolche just yet until I start mapping out, new combos or seeing what lines you can go for with other cards. Because you usually want to end with this, so it would feel weird to like make this and then climb into the link 3 and then turn that link 3 back into Sistart. I don't really know how that's going to go, but this card gives you a lot of protection, especially from cards like Cosmic Cyclone on your Chateau, which is like the focal point of your deck. So you really do like ending this card, but the link 3 I think is good for talking about new Madolche monsters, and maybe you can just like take out one of these next 6 flex spots in the extra deck to run him later. But of course, that's far out in Infinite Forbidden, so we won't need to dedicate too much thought to that just yet. Now, honestly, the only additional real card in this extra deck is the 1 Rafflesia. This is something other Madolche players have done in the past. It's something I've done in several other builds, where you're a rank 4 deck that's really weak to hand trap, so you might as well attempt to take advantage of having Rafflesia be able to send Gravedigger and stop hand traps from, blowing you out entirely. So we do run the 1 Rafflesia. She is Earth, so even if you're locked under Vernisylph, you're still fine to use her effect. Some generic rank 4 tools, we have Abyss Dweller and Baguska. These are just like perfectly fine rank 4s to run in your deck. You could also choose to run Exciton, Tornado Dragon, even just any decent rank 4 will be fine depending on what's in the meta. 1 Gaianite and 1 Zeus. You do have Chocolate a la Mode, so there are times going second where if you don't, or like if you're not locked into Madolche, you can go like Tiramisu, overlay Chocolate a la Mode, overlay Gaia Charger, overlay Divine Arsenal, a Zeus. That's a really big Zeus. So these come up more than like certain other cards would. They still don't come up very often at all. Like almost all of these cards are just Prosperity Banishes. And then I am running Alsa just in case someone gives me Contact C. This can be SP Little Knight if you want, but SP is in another deck right now, and because it is almost maximum irrelevant, I just chose to grab an Alsa because I haven't put this card in a profile in a while. So, yep, Alsa, SP, doesn't really matter. If you really are worried about it, you can plan out to Contact C, but that's never coming up. And yeah, that's going to be it for this deck profile. I hope you guys enjoyed. If I'm going to give a little bit more thought towards the new Madolche support, because some people might be looking forward to that, I think it is fine, but it needed 1 more card. I think we needed 1 more main deck monster that can help play through hand traps or extend into a separate line of play. But as it stands, this deck is just like one of the weakest deck to hand traps I've ever seen, and that's why I think it mostly thrives in board break formats. I think the new rank 5 Tiramisu does give another line of play, kind of. If you get hand trapped to Oblivion, you can make her as an interrupt. But honestly, I just don't think it was enough. I think the new trap is fine, but could have been better. I think the new link 3 is okay, but doesn't really fix anything for the deck. You usually have no problem finding extra cards. This card in my list, or like the link 3 in my list, will essentially just grab the additional trap more often than not. The new Xyz is good. I think she's fine, but I don't think she fixes any of the deck's actual problems. And when the deck actually plays, I don't even think it needed another interrupt. It's nice because sometimes your board doesn't do that much if you don't open the non-engine that works with it for your Chateau, but overall, I think it's okay. Some people are hyping it up a lot. I don't think it's that good. I'm not trying to like oversell the hype of Madolche. I think the deck has formats where it's great in a board breaker format, or matchups where Glass Souffle, like if a matchup where Glass Souffle is strong, is popular, then Madolche can actually be a solid rogue option. But they didn't help what the deck needs. I'm not asking for a negate for Nibiru, just some other way to play through low impacts and maybe an alternate line of play should something really bad happen. But that's all I'm going to say about the deck. Leave your comments down below. I know a lot of people might be thinking about Madolche now that the support's been revealed. It's been a favorite of mine for a very long time. And yeah, hope you guys liked the video. Leave a like if you did. This has been Aaron from Top Tier Gaming. Bye, YouTube.